Hello and welcome to Savage Garden, an interview with a vampire podcast where myself, Kat, and my co-host Naomi talk through immortality one morsel at a time. And today we are here to talk about season 1, episode 2, After the Phantoms of Your Former Self. Naomi, how are you doing and how are you feeling about this episode of the show?
Hi, Kat. I'm fine, thank you. It was funny because we were going through our rewatch. It's like I can't really remember what happens in the second episode.
But it has so many iconic scenes, but it doesn't move the narrative on hugely.
But also, there are so many iconic scenes in this particular episode. And if you look up, if you type in "interview with the vampire" into Google, so many of the images that will come up are from this episode. And it's directed by Alan Taylor. This is the last episode to date that he has directed for the show. So he kind of came on board, did the first two, and then exited in a blaze of glory. He's had a very eclectic career up till now. He's directed a huge number of shows, and it is written by Dave Harris and Jonathan Seniceros. And Jonathan also co-wrote two absolute series, two bangers. Do You Know What It Means to Be Loved by Death, which is our first look at the Paris Coven and the Théâtre de Vampire. And God, I said that badly. We need Matt Berry on here doing this. Théâtre de Vampire. Yes, we need Mr. Berry. He would do this better. And Jonathan also co-wrote Don't Be Afraid, Just Start the Tape, which is an absolute series 2 banger with the probably the world's most iconic uh, argument in this entire series, I would think. One of those ones that people can just sort of say off the top of their heads. But yeah, it's what do you think? Is it because I don't think either of us could quite remember what happened in it. And you said it's quite lowly rated on IMDb?
Like yourself, I remember the first episode completely hooking me in, and then I immediately wanted to watch the next episode, but I can't really say as I particularly remembered anything. And yeah, obviously last time we went through the IMDb rankings and the pilot episode was ranked 10th out of 15, which feels a little harsh. This one is 15 out of 15, but it still has a rating of 7.8, which I feel is it's still quite strong. You know, you look at some of the TV shows and their like worst episodes are, 5 and below or whatever. But so 7.8, I think it's an admirable lowest rated, but it is the lowest rated. And maybe that is because, as you say, a lot of stuff happens, but also nothing happens. It's a lot of information. It's kind of like Vampire 101. Like, let's get through all of the lore, let's get through all of the specialist skills, but we're not really going to propel the actual story between Louis and Lestat too far.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that a bit when it comes to the sort of the reveal of the law that obviously vampires can't go into the sunlight, because I think that's quite key what you said there about this being kind of a 101 episode, because there is a couple of things that just like don't vibe quite as well with the rest of the series. But I mean it's a fun episode, and it skips over a lot of time. I feel like if there's one thing that I want series 3 to do, it's to go back a little bit, because boy does Louis skip over 5 entire years in this episode. Like, yes, I'm with Lestat. Oh, and then it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Hold on there, handsome. You're with this man for 5 years and you've just skipped it like that. I mean, I want nice, sweet times. I don't want in series 3, and I don't think they have any intention of doing it either. To show Lestat kind of, countermanding or undermining what Louis says. Because if you take Louis's agency from him, that's no fun at all. But I do want to see some of the softer times between Louis and Lestat while they were together in the early years. And I desperately, desperately want some lovely scenes between Lestat and Claudia Delaney Hales, because I think that would be, I think if you don't have them, it's going to be hard to entirely sell that Lestat loved her, because I don't think we've seen quite enough yet, just yet. Don't you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. And yeah, the time jumping is insane because there's one scene where Grace is pregnant for the first time, and then
Yes.
the next time we see Grace, she's got about 20 kids, it feels like. And there's another one that has just been born. And it's like, wait a minute, what? Where are we? Like, what's going on with time now?
Yeah, when I first saw it, I thought that was the child that she was pregnant with, but then
Yeah.
Louis consents that she's pregnant with twins, so it was very confusing. Um, but yes, when we last left our intrepid heroes. So Louis was breathily and orgasmically describing his turning to Daniel, and we just sort of left them just outside the church. And we start again back in that grim little cell of a Dubai apartment. And our first kind of main Easter egg for the wider series, which is that Daniel is looking at a portrait created by Marius, who is Armand's maker. Although we don't actually, I don't think we find that out in the series until much later in series 2. And I just think every scene between Daniel and Armand, when you come back and look at it, is just completely insane in retrospect. Because you've got Armand pretending that he doesn't know who Daniel is. You've got Armand pretending he's not Armand, but Rashid. He's wandering around like he's literally playing dress up as Louis' slave. I mean, this is not healthy behavior, guys. We don't kink shame here. We welcome all kinks, but guys, this is just literally you playing out your BDSM relationship. Is like giggles for Daniel, who doesn't realize yet.
I think in terms of the Rashid character, I was always like from my first watch wondering who he was because I kind of felt that he's chatty. If he's a human familiar, he's a bit back chatty, and I'm not quite sure that even as chill as Louis is, I'm not quite sure that he'd get away with, speaking the way that he does. So I was always kind of waiting for well, I've seen the film, where's Antonio Banderas? Um, so the shock wasn't quite a shock for me.
We see it's so funny because I hadn't twigged that he was Armand, but because I'm probably slow. But I suppose because you get people's ideas fixated in your head. I mean, Armand in the book is like a teenage ginger. So, but because I had Antonio Banderas in my head, I kept waiting for that, a similar ethnicity or for that kind of character to appear. And all I kept thinking is, oh, it's quite handsome, this little devil here to be wandering around as a manservant. I hadn't twigged that he was Armand, but it is, yeah, it's crazy. I mean, like he's going around telling Daniel, "I serve a god." Oh, I'm sure you do, my friend. I'm sure you do. But this is like, what is this appropriate? Is this appropriate to be telling your what half boyfriend? I mean, we'll get into that, but that's like, oh, that whole relationship is so confusing. In this particular opening scene, I'm like, Louis, why do we have a fire trap going on the table? Why are there so many candles on this main table that you've set up for Daniel? Is this safe? I mean, we appreciate that you have the fire gift, but is this safe to have all of these candles in your pretty Dubai apartment? Like, are you just being a secret romantic? Has Armand set these out for Daniel? Is Armand just trying to make it nice for him? Like, what's going on? The whole thing's crazy.
He's obviously seen Blind, the film that played at Fright Fest a few years ago, which has a very notable climactic scene where the blind woman um decorates her entire house with lit candles, despite
Oh
nobody
God,
else being in the
yes.
house, and
That's an
despite her being
amazing
blind,
scene.
she doesn't need light to see around her house because she doesn't see with her eyes. Um, that's one big fire hazard. So clearly, Louis is a secret fan of Blind, and he's like, yeah,
Yes,
no, that's how the humans decorate their house.
absolutely. I'm still. I reckon it's Armand. I reckon this is Armand, like secretly trying to woo Daniel by like if he puts like some shiny, beautiful candles on the table, Daniel will know and instantly fall in love with him. And then we have this whole 7-course meal, which again, I'm like, what are we doing here? Like Daniel doesn't need a 7-course meal, but you've decided to set this up. And it's like, what are you, is it Louis trying to show off his new position? Is it Armand trying to woo him? One of the things that isn't really talked about Louis is that he is so wonderfully pretentious. I mean, our little capitalist king is, he's got money. He's obviously, if not a billionaire, then certainly a multimillionaire. He's got this amazing Dubai apartment that is full of incredibly expensive art. You've got the Bacon triptych, which forms the background to a lot of the sequences. But he is very snobby, but he's also very snobby in New Orleans because you've got this family. He may be funding them via being a pimp and everything else, but he's sort of in a slightly different class to the rest of the people that are out there on the streets. He's they live in the very fancy house, and even the first scene of them all like taking tea together in the first episode, it's sort of a mirror of what you would expect to see in like I don't know, like an English costume drama. Louis has always been, he likes the trappings of wealth. He's he is a capitalist king. He likes the nicer things, I think. But a 7-course meal is quite a lot. I did a 7-course meal once, and I'm going to be honest, by the third course you get bored.
There's too many fancy things.
It's a 7-course meal and several endangered species, I think is what Daniel
Yes,
says. Yeah, I've eaten several endangered species. So it is what you say, it's that thing of showing off his wealth. Not only can he put on this lavish 7-course meal, but it's like the rarest of the rare, in terms of food and animals. I mean, I think at one point there's like a hoof or something that gets like put
yes.
down on the plate.
Oh,
It's not quite what you're going to get at a Michelin star restaurant in terms it's very off the beaten path in terms of the creatures that he's given. But yeah, I mean, there's just for me there's not enough dessert. Me, I've got a
no.
sweet tooth. 7 courses, there's like one dessert. No, no.
Yeah, and the dessert looks a bit sad, to be honest. You've got all these other like insane things, and then you've got all the pageantry of them hooking up. It's just a blood bag, Louis. Just scoff the blood bag. And I mean, it's a really interesting thing because it's a show. It's kind of an insecure show, but it is a show of his power. It's a show of his power. It's a show of his wealth. And particularly when he is recounting a time in which, well, he did have money, but he certainly didn't have respect or standing because of the horrific racist age in which he was living. So I suppose it's a very visual way of showing how far he's come. It's just the wrong audience for it because Daniel doesn't give a fuck. It's like
Yeah.
you've chosen the wrong person. Daniel doesn't care. Daniel just wants your story. You could have served him a pizza slice and he would still have been captivated. You didn't need to do the romantic 7-course meal. So again, I think this is just like Armand. I love it when the fan artists do these sort of pictures of Armand with like huge eyes, like, "Hi, I want to be your friend forever. Please love me." And I feel that that's what he's like inside when it comes to Daniel. I think this is just his very weird way of wooing him. And then we flash back to vampires walk into a church. Now, I am nothing like Lestat, but I don't think I've ever felt like more akin to him than at the point in which he is just kind of fussily trying to get rid of the priest's bodies while Louis is like obviously going to pieces and dying behind him. Like the man has a mission. He's hungry. He needs to get rid of these bodies. Can't be doing with all this fuss.
I mean, you say that you're not too much like the stat, but I feel that there are some aspects of your personality sometimes, and that being one of them. I can see,
I don't.
in a
I don't do
crisis,
very well.
you would be that person that would,
Mm.
be getting on with it.
Well, you got to get rid of the priest's bodies. You can't just leave them in the church. That's barbaric. Like there's an entire graveyard that you could just hurl him into. But it was when he was just. I mean, this is what I love about the series, that the tone is just. I mean, this is obviously like for Louis, he's dying and retching, and Lestat's like, oh, yeah, you're dying, whatever, whilst like trying to break the priest's legs so he fits in. It's very funny. Tonally, it's really, really funny. And it's a lovely scene when they're looking at each other and it's all going like beautifully hazy. And they're just looking at each other. I mean, the entire walk back, Lestat cannot take his eyes off Louis. I mean, that man is down bad. It's lovely. And I think because when I watched it, I sort of paused to take notes. Every frame of the show looks incredible. Like anytime
Mm.
you pause it, because I think I'm so used, particularly now, to everything looking just a bit shit, particularly because this is mostly filmed at night. And right now we have such a problem in shows and in cinema with the night scenes. You just can't see anything. And it's never a problem with Interview with the Vampire.
Some of the stuff with films is down to like the projectors and
Mm,
cinemas not paying for bulbs. That's one of my big rants I won't get into on this. But yeah, you're right. There is a lot with television, like Game of Thrones. There were some seasons of Game of Thrones where I couldn't tell what was going on if it was nighttime. It's like I don't, and they all look the same.
yeah,
You know, all of the men
yeah.
on the wall have got their beards and their northern accents. I don't know who any of them are, and I can't see them because they've not lit it correctly. But yeah, interview corrects that, and you kind of have to. You know, you've got a program about people who can only be out at night. You've got to make sure that it looks good. But yeah, the production design, you know, the location scouting, everything just looks like a, you know, like a painting that you would see in Louis's house.
Yeah, it's beautiful and it's so bright and so full of color. And obviously that changes a little bit when it gets to Paris, where it becomes kind of deeper colors, but nowhere near as vibrant as it was in New Orleans. And obviously I expect series three with Rockstat. Sorry. Oh yeah, Rockstat. Rockstar Lestat. I imagine that that's going to be ridiculously colorful and glitzy in a different way. But yeah, I was kind of pausing on the New Orleans takes, and they all looked phenomenal. And I really felt Louis when he was deeply hungry and listening to this very, very sweet tractor salesman, because the man just wanted food. I too cannot concentrate when I'm hungry.
I can confirm
Uh,
this. Yes,
yes, no,
when Naomi is hungry, we feed her. There are yeah, like a mogwai. Sometimes there are certain rules, and the main one
mm,
is don't let Naomi get hungry, and that is
no,
something that you definitely share with Louis.
yes, no. When I get hungry, it just doesn't work. I need food immediately. Um, and I love that they chose to kind of emphasize Louis' uh, sort of sexual preferences by goes in the room full of people, any of whom will feed him, and he's immediately wants the sort of the handsome sailor, as the stat says, straight for the prettiest girl in the room. And he's talking to this very sweet guy, and Louis just wants to eat him, and I felt really sad for him. I mean, sure, he's boring, but you don't play with your food. Don't be nasty to them. And we have, I mean, again, just in terms of how the writers' room have set out the arc of the series, our error, which is Lestat talking to Louis telepathically about the tractor salesman, which of course he can't, because once they have taken the dark gift, Lestat can no longer read Louis's mind. And dear God, would the series be easier if these two idiots could read each other's minds?
Could it be a case of because Louis hasn't killed yet? That's how they're getting around it. Is it the accepting of the gift that then the first kill? So it's like in like
Ooh.
the Lost Boys. In the Lost Boys, you're not a vampire until you've made your first kill, which is how Jason Patrick gets away with
Mm.
it. Um, so maybe it's kind of that.
That's a really interesting thought. I haven't seen that sort of come up. I mean, it's a setup for the 1, 2, 3 punchline of Daniel in the finale, which is still my favorite scene of all time. When he goes full Columbo and he's like, "Oh yeah, you could hear you could hear Lestat in your head talking about the tractor salesman, but that wasn't right, was it?" Just kind of like gear Louis up to the fact that actually, Louis, you know what, your memory, it's not infallible, my friend. But I do like that idea as well. I like the idea that it could be kind of both. That's good.
Mm.
I like that. And then they take him home and they eat him, and I feel really sad because his daughter wanted a pony. I mean, this is the thing about the show, is that it kind of goes in and out in terms of your sympathy for the human victims, because sometimes they're just meat and sometimes they take the time to showcase them. I mean, as Daniel said, well, you just robbed a daughter of her father, but it is Louis's first time. It is very funny. You've got him chomping away while Lestat's like, no, 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 don't bite the blood, Louis. It's hilarious, and the set design of Rue Royale is incredible. You have, so the set decor is, I believe, by Selena van der Brink, and it is full of incredibly expensive art in the background. And we credit appropriately on this show. So there is a Tumblr user called Nico de l'Enfant who has charted all of the artwork that is in the Rue Royale Gallia's house and also in the Dubai apartment. And in this sequence, you've got a Manet and Starry Night by Edvard Munch in the background. I mean, Lestat is rich, rich. He's just got like random artwork on the walls. And again, I'm like, well, did you bring any of this with you? Or have you bought it because Louis has told you to buy it? Are we kind of like, do we have the thread of Louis is the art dealer even then? Because we know that everything that Lestat buys for the townhouse comes kind of from Louis' suggestion. So did Lestat buy this art or did Louis suggest it? But either way, the man is rich. He's got himself some cash.
And obviously he kind of seems to know everybody, throughout history, and was there, when such and such a opera was written. And
Yes.
so yeah, he's very, tied into, that very fine, high society world.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And this is the after he's bitten him, and obviously Louis is like, fuck, I'm a vampire now what? This is the only scene that doesn't entirely work for me because, as you said, this is where it gets to kind of the how do we show vampire 101 lore, because Lestat lets Louis walk out the door in sunlight. And I know that for Queen of the Damned to work, and Sam Reid has said this, Lestat has to have a degree of toxic masculinity inside him. And often when I watch the show, I kind of have to stop my own thing, which is that we do tend to forgive attractive white men for their crimes, particularly on TV if
Mm.
they're incredibly charming. Like this was a huge thing for the You series. I'd be talking to people at work and they'd be like, "Oh, he just really likes her." No, no, he's a
No.
psychopathic stalker who will inevitably, as he does, end up murdering her. And I think with Lestat, we're just like, oh, he's such a fluffy bunny. We love him. And then he drops Louis out the sky. So we have to accept that there is that element of Lestat because he is continually terrified of being left alone. That is the core of who he is. But I do not buy in this moment that he would let Louis walk out the door without going, oh, by the way, babes, sunlight kills us. So we come back inside. Because he doesn't stop Louis, doesn't go after Louis. He lets him walk out the door so that we can see Louis burning and we have that phenomenal makeup effect of him being burned and then drowning himself in the milk. And I feel like that's one of the things where it's like we just have to show that they burn in sunlight.
Yeah, I agree. It doesn't quite feel, because Lestat has been playing the long game with sort of
Yeah.
wooing Louis, and then he kind of finally gets him. I don't think he would. I don't think the toxic side of him. I don't think the toxic side of him would let Louis go because he's finally got him now. But it
Yes,
is kind of played.
exactly. Exactly.
It's played off as him being, a bit like petulant and his feelings are hurt or whatever, and he's just like, "Oh, go then," which kind of goes back to what we were talking about last time with Lestat being a bit of a toddler. But
Mm.
still, they don't like to break their favourite's toys, and in throwing Louis out, he doesn't know that there's gonna be milk. He doesn't know that there's going to be something. And even then, when Louis comes back, it still takes his time to go to the door to answer, which again, I feel like
Yeah.
if he was throwing him out there to teach him a lesson, he would be right there by the door ready to let him in and be like, well, I told you.
Yeah. I mean, that's absolutely, absolutely. That's because when we see the sequence, Louis goes quite a long way away from the house. And it's like, I just don't buy it. You have wooed him for all this time. You've not revealed your vampiric nature. You've just made this phenomenal plea. You've married this man on a church altar, you know, in a sea of blood, and you have a tiny little tiff, and you send him out to burn to death in the sunlight. I mean, and it's always a bit, I mean, Claudia dies in sunlight in 3 seconds flat, whereas Louis manages to walk, this brand new vampire walks down the street in the sun for quite some time. I mean, I suppose you can say he's in half in the shadows and he's fine and recovers in 2 seconds. No, it's the only, and I get it because it's, how do you, it's the same, it's the equivalent to me of the swoopy candlelight scene in the previous one where we had to show that, oh, there's something killing the people, and we're like, yeah, it's a stat, he's a vampire, we know that, guys. You don't need to, you know. But I suppose it's for the people who have no idea who Anne Rice is, who, you know, maybe don't watch vampire stuff, we can't assume. And so this is their, oh, sunlight's bad for you guys, because it just, that's the only sequence that doesn't work for me, because I just don't buy him letting Louis go out the door.
I guess the other argument is, this is, Louis recounting it, and as we sort of find out through the series, his memory and recollections aren't necessarily 100% truthful or accurate. It could be that, Lestat was telling him, no, you mustn't, and Louis still not quite believing what he is, storms out, and then is like, oh shit, yeah. And maybe he didn't walk quite as far as he thought he did, but
Yeah.
his pride doesn't want to admit that he kind of like dipped a toe out and then was like, oh no, it's hot. So it could just be that whole fabrication of memories taking over.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a generous interpretation. But I think that's definitely, because it's just like, he's like, oh, sunlight gives light to everything but us. I should have told you that. You think? You think you could have told him that? Jesus fucking Christ, Lestat, what are you doing? So yeah, I think this is just one of these. Look, we really need to show how dangerous the sun is to them. But I feel that they could have achieved that. I mean, like, why does Lestat have a suicide skylight that is open in his house? Why would you have like a skylight that allows this massive patch of light into your house, Lestat? That just doesn't make sense to me. Unless, it's kind of emblematic of where he is at that point in his life, that he likes the danger. That, he likes the idea of having that bit of sunlight that could potentially hurt him, but not really. But yeah, I feel like they could have shown that internally without having to put Jacob Anderson through all those prosthetics, although he did look incredible. The makeup team on this show is phenomenal. I mean, everyone's work is great, so we're not being mean. It's just the one scene that just doesn't quite vibe, because at the point at which Lestat drops Louis, we can understand, but we cannot condone. But I just don't see him letting him walk out the door. We have probably the single most gift scene in the entire show, which is the lovely Sam Reid just cheerfully showing off the coffin room while stripping completely naked. And that must be tough to do, just to be fully nude when no one else is in that particular scene. Just to be like, particularly as he's so different to Lestat, just wandering around, just clambering into a coffin going, you can be on top. I mean, that's a lot for poor closeted Louis. 2 seconds ago he was human, now he's a vampire, now he's got a husband, now he's got a husband that's like, hey, you can be on top, I don't mind. It's like kind of dream and nightmare all in once, I would think.
Yeah, he's getting a lot of new things thrust, because the thing is, he says to Daniel, I was coming into everything, my vampirism, my sexuality, and it's kind of all rolled up into that one scene, because this is a coffin, this is where we have to sleep now, but also we're going to be sleeping together until I can get you your own coffin, but for now, come on in. And yeah, the you can be on top obviously has many many different, interpretations, and is very suggestive given the nature of the relationship that we've already seen. So yeah, it's a lot to kind of dump on Louis, who has also just been horrifically half burned.
Yes, which he recovers from incredibly quickly, we have to say, in this scene,
Yes.
because I'm sure that he was taking Lestat up on his offer 4 seconds later. So, Louis's got a lot of stamina for a brand new vampire. He's recovered very quickly. It is a great scene, though. It is one of my favorites. We just like, when everyone's like, should I watch Interview with the Vampire? I got that photo ready. Bang. Here you go. Here's Sam Reid for you. Looking ridiculously shredded. I mean, ridiculous shredded. I always worry because, like, I'm a mother hen, because I know that the gentlemen, in order to do these scenes, basically have to kind of eat nothing but protein for a week. And then they do that ridiculous thing quite often, although not so much here, but they usually do that thing where they dehydrate themselves so that
Yes.
everything looks so much leaner. And when I went there, I'm just like, it's okay. Lestat can be a little bit cozy. Well, he can't because Lestat was starving at the point at which he was turned. But you're like, we don't mind if Lestat has a teeny little bit of a tummy. It's fine. We'd be happy. But they have to get this ridiculously like shredded level. And he does obviously look very, very fine. And I do appreciate the lighting designers who do all the scenes in Rue Royale are very warm. They're very candlelit. It's very, very flattering on both of their skin tones, actually, on both Sam Reid and Jacob Anderson's skin tones. But yes, that is the sort of the scene that I'm just like, oh, here, just look, enjoy Sam Reid in the coffin scene, and look how beautiful Louis looks. But yes, the you can be on top. Brilliant line, brilliant line. And Daniel doesn't give a shit. Like, oh yeah, great, you were struggling with your sexuality. Way, can we go back to the part where you ate that man's, that poor man in your house, just chomped on him like a Big Mac. I'm so sorry that your sexuality was hard for you. And the thing is, Daniel is quite a lot of the time he's a little bit flip for what Louis is going through, but you know he's an old man. He doesn't care. And this is when we get Louis. Louis in some of the scenes, he's like proletarizing. He's just like he's like preaching for the pulpit, like his brother, while simultaneously being completely feral and eating. I don't even know what that was. Was it like a fox? What was he
Yeah, I think
eating?
they said it's a sand fox, I think they said. Again, it was like a very rare creature. But yeah, it looks a little bit like a fennec fox, but I think they call it a sand fox.
Yeah, I mean, he's just. I like that Louis likes to pretend that he is this delicate little soul, that he's not really into any of it. Louis is feral. Like, if you put me in a room with Louis and Lestat, I would be way more scared of Louis because it's always the quiet one. Like Lestat, you could talk him round. You just like stroke his ego a little bit. You can probably distract him enough to get out the room before him eating you. I'm not sure you could distract Louis because Louis's not going to care. Louis cares about very specific things: his family, Lestat, and Claudie. That's about it, and Armand as well. Um, but you're not going to be able to distract a hangry Louis. You've got no chance. He's going to have scuffed you in 3 seconds flat. It's a feral child.
Yeah, I think it's a quite a common sort of trope of vampire fiction is that the more, I guess, lovable or polite vampire is actually the one that's the most messed up. So, like in Buffy, Angel, he's this like super sweet guy until he switches and is Angelus, and then he's like the worst vampire in history. And then in the Vampire Diaries, you've got the Salvatore brothers, you've got Damon, who is very Lestat, blunt and to the point.
I've never seen it. I know that it's like crazy, crazy popular because the two actors always go to conventions and sell out in 4 seconds.
Yeah, so you've got Damon Salvatore, who is like the cocky brother, he's blunt, he's the bad boy, and then you've got Stefan, who is like Edward Cullen 2.0. He's so sweet, he's so sensitive, and yet he Damon drinks human blood. Stefan doesn't because Stefan can't because Stefan's what they call a ripper, and once Stefan starts, he's basically an addict, and once he starts, he can't stop. Um, and that's
I love
kind
that you
of
have all
like
this lore down.
Yeah, I did. The first series of the Vampire Diaries is very twee until the last 10 minutes of the very first season, when a load of stuff kicks off and you're like, what the? And then from then it's quite good. And then they had the spin-off, the originals, which deals with the original vampire family, which incidentally, their flashbacks are New Orleans in the 1920s, which is
Ah,
quite, interesting to then sort of like see like the CW version of 1920s New Orleans against interviews. I mean, the originals is more into like witches and stuff as well, so there's a lot more sort of like magic components, but there is that sort of comparison with Stefan and Angel being the Shire. And look at your True Blood as well. You've got Eric, who is the big sort of preening princess, and then you've got Bill, who's like, no, I'm the sensitive vampire, and yet Bill's the one who can't control himself. Bill's the one that once he starts drinking, that's it, everyone's dead. And Louis definitely kind of conforms to that trope of he's a character that we should be rooting for and stuff, but actually he, as you say, he's probably the more dangerous one. It's like the whole spiders thing, isn't it? Like the smaller they are or whatever, the more
mm,
potent.
I love that you know your vampire lore. I feel like with Louis, he sort of, I mean, he comes into his power, but I feel it's there all along, and he doesn't quite realize it. And there's definitely an undertone of him trying to make out he's slightly fluffier than he is, because obviously he is a pimp. He wouldn't have survived in the line of work that he is. And this isn't to kind of go into, the stereotype of like the hyper masculine black man, because that's not what the show does at all. It's very clever at
No,
subverting that. But I do feel Louis has a lot of power from minute one. It just takes him a little while to realize it. But yeah, if I was Daniel in that moment and he was chowing down on that fox in front of me, I'd be like, am I safe here? Like, I know he already ate me last time. Am I going to get through this? Daniel doesn't care, because Daniel is effectively, I suppose, he's not dying, but he's got an illness that he knows is going to significantly impact upon his life. So I suppose he's kind of just out of all fucks, really. So he's just like, fine, eat a fox in front of me. I don't care. But if I was there, I'd be like, I'm not sure. He's very handsome and he's very charming and he looks like a tech bro billionaire, but I'm not too sure about this. It would be freaking me out just a tad. But yeah, I know nothing about the Vampire Diaries. The only thing I know is that Daniel Gillers was in it, and he is in, I believe, the second series of the Newsreader alongside Sam Reid, and
oh,
obviously he is in a show which a film which everyone listening should absolutely go and watch, which is called Coming Home in the Dark, which is very, very, very
yes.
dark. But he is very dark, guys. Don't say I didn't warn you.
I will second that. I will second that recommendation. So in the Vampire Diaries, he's one of the originals, and
Okay.
again, he is the good brother. He's the eldest brother. He's the one that keeps everyone in charge, and then he has a feral Lestat brother called Klaus, who again is played by Joseph Morgan, who is another one that at conventions is like heroin to certain fans. And he is Klaus is very much a Lestat in that he does lots of terrible things, and yet the audience can't help but love him.
Aww. I just want to put out into the universe, because I've been doing this like a one woman band for a while now. We want Interview with the Vampire Cast at conventions, please. Any
Yes,
conventions, UK, US, we will travel, preferably UK, but we need to see them. I think everyone feels like they have to book Sam Reid, and I'm not. And that man doesn't like leaving his house. It's okay, we understand. He just did a podcast where he said, I don't interact with anyone very much, and I was like, we are literally soulmates. We are true platonic soulmates, because I too don't like leaving my house. So we don't have to get him. We have an entire British cast. Delaney Hales, Asad Zaman, let's get Joseph Potter. We will show out in force for them, guys, and I'm sure that everyone listening would agree. So yeah, let's get them booked and ready at some conventions. So in the show, we now go back to Louis' homestead because he can't separate his life, his vampiric life from his home life. Louis' mother is a complete bitch, but I sort of love her for that. She's just like, I mean, she's terrible in the way she treats Louis, but I love that she's not afraid to tell Lestat that he's wildly overdressed for a garden party. So Louis' eyeglasses in this scene, which I've been very tempted by, but they need to get Louis' ones back in stock. These are by the Historic Eyewear Company, and they are in the model 1835 to 80. And he wears an oval, then he wears an octagon, and then another episode he's got the red tinted lenses because you can get them to put whatever custom lenses you want in them. And they've got a vampiric red, which I'm assuming is the version they used. And they do look incredibly fine on Jacob Anderson, I have to say. They look very, very good. I think he's wearing like a gunmetal grey, and all at the moment all you can buy is the gold. But he does look very good. I do want to question why his family doesn't really react to the fact that he now has green eyes.
I mean, his mum thinks about it, doesn't she? She sort of mentions like his eyes, and then it's like, "Oh, I've got to wear these glasses because the doc says." So I guess they just they just accept, or I mean, they're getting money still, so they're just prepared to be like, "Oh, yeah, no, he's got different colored eyes. Yeah, it's normal."
And that kind of it was what makes me so sad about Louis' relationship with his family. Like you said in the last episode, you know, the fact that he is in his mid-30s and not married kind of immediately sort of, you know, bachelor about town because obviously he's hiding his sexuality. So they know, they've always known, but it's like this sort of don't ask, don't tell situation. And obviously his mother is homophobic and doesn't approve. Um, they are not thrilled, obviously, that he shows up with a white husband effectively in tow, even if they don't necessarily recognize Lestat as that at this point. But you know, Grace is very accepting of the fact that his eyes are completely different. But I would be like, I sort of feel like off screen there's some point where they're like, holy shit, did you see that Louis' eyes have changed from brown to green? Like, what's going on? And I don't know, I feel like maybe there was this element of there was going to be like more hints of supernatural and witchcraft and the family kind of being comfortable with hoodoo and all that kind of thing um, in the show. And that would have perhaps explained why they're so relaxed. But as you said, it could just be that they're happy they're getting cash. Just happy they're getting
Yeah.
cash.
Yeah, I mean, they're quite happy to look the other way about the fact that the cash is coming from a brothel. And so I kind
Yeah,
of feel that if they're quite happy to do that, that anything else on top of that is like, well, you know, it's money. That as you say, you know, they're
yeah,
very accustomed to that lifestyle. And whilst his mum is, you know, she's quite some of the stuff that she says to Louis is quite biting. What she thinks is worse. So she's not
yeah.
like really giving it him because she knows that if she rocks the boat too much, then he can just turn around and be like, well, screw you guys. I'm going to go and live with my rich husband and I'll take your cut as well.
Yeah, her everything you need to know about her is when she says, "Oh, look at his nails," because obviously she presumably associates him getting his nails done when it's actually just the vampiric nails with him being a homosexual. And it's just like a whole world of homophobia in that one line. It's just like so much disdain and contempt for her eldest son, and it's horrible. Truly is horrible. And then I mean, the early series. I mean, obviously we move away from it when they. Well, we don't really move away from it when we come to Paris because I feel like every interaction between Louis Claudia and the Paris Coven is, you know, it has this streak of profound racism and white supremacy going through all of it. But we then move to Louis dealing with like the alderman's lawyer, and that man would have been dead the second he touched me. But it has Jacob Anderson's phenomenal dabble in fuckery monologue, which we can't do justice to. I mean, he is extraordinary in that moment, and Lestat just doesn't get it because he feels like Louis being a vampire now transcends the color of his skin, and that's just not how it works. Doesn't appreciate that Louis still has to live in this world, and the fact that everyone is now secondary to him and he can scoff them in 2 seconds, it doesn't matter. Unless they want to go and live in an ivory tower somewhere away from everybody, Louis still has to traverse the world as a black man that he's getting zero respect. But Lestat just doesn't get that at all. And the Library of Confusion is a great line, but it sort of shows from minute one that, oh, this probably isn't going to quite work, because Lestat just doesn't understand. And they did their chemistry read on Zoom, and this is the only sequence we've seen from it, because I'd love to see more, and I don't know if we'll ever get it. But they did this whole Library of Confusion speech where they're getting rid of the guy's body in the incinerator on Zoom. I can't imagine doing a chemistry read on Zoom.
Yeah, obviously, because obviously, I mean, they work it into the show is the pandemic setting. But yeah, there was. But then I did an interview recently for a film called The Dead Thing, and the director was saying that they just a lot of places they don't even give chemistry reads anymore. Like since the pandemic, it's something that's fallen off. So he literally
Wow.
didn't know if, and the film is all built around a sort of a toxic relationship. A woman meets a guy via a dating app and ends up kind of literally getting ghosted. Um, so a lot of the story hinges on their dynamic, but he didn't know if it was going to work until they literally turned up on set together and started filming. So,
Wow.
and that it's one of the things of the pandemic. So at least thank God with Interview the Vampire, they were still at least trying to do some sort of chemistry interaction. But yeah, Zoom, technical difficulties, delays. It just must be such, and you're still at the end of the day, you're sat in your location and they're sat in their location, and you're doing it through a screen. So yeah, just the fact that that's how much chemistry that they have, that they can connect even over the virtual, internet,
Yeah.
thousands of miles apart, it just speaks testament to why this show works so well. Because if they can do that in an audition hundreds of miles, different time zones probably, then you know that you're onto a winner when you get them up close and personal.
Yeah, because Sam Reid has said that no one had seen him until he literally pitched up on set, which is incredible. I mean, to cast these guys, yeah, you're right. Chemistry isn't a thing that, you can't build it, you can't create it. It's just there. And Sam Reid and Jacob Anderson do have just the most phenomenal chemistry. I mean, it shines in every single sequence. And even here, when they're arguing, he's doing his, queer, half queer, non-discriminating thing. I mean, the flow of the two of them and the way that they interact with each other, it's just electric, just absolutely electric. And the show just simply would not work without them. And because I was quite worried, because Louis is not a big character after this book. And I think the one thing I can be reassured about is that there is no way this chemistry is going anywhere.
Mm.
Although I will be interested to see how the show navigates it, because in the books, Lestat falls in love with anyone he meets. It's great. Like Lestat, you go up and introduce yourself to Lestat, and it's like, hello, you are my undying love. And then 2 books later, Lestat doesn't know who you are. Like, he makes fledglings here, there, and everywhere. I mean, he makes Rowena, who is one of the Mayfair witches, he makes her a fledgling, and then a few books later, it's like, who's that again? He just pays no attention. And I don't think they can do that in this show. They can do relationships if Louis is open and happy for it, but they've made them so much the focal point that slutty Lestat's not quite going to work, I don't think. And nor
No.
perhaps do you necessarily want him. I mean, with groupies or with anything meaningless, sure. But I feel like any sort of true love, other than obviously we need to see him with Nicholas, but I feel that anything post Louis, nah. Why would you throw Jacob Anderson away from anyone else? This is my problem with Time Stalker, because every time the characters were on screen, I was just like, Alice, babes, Jacob Anderson's right there. Don't really understand why we're focusing on this Welsh guy when Jacob is just there wearing a very fine shade of terracotta lipstick. I'm not really getting where you're coming from, love.
The version of his character in the 80s especially is like quite
Oh,
mature.
damn. Yeah. I was just like, I have no idea why we're focusing on the washed up rock star where we've got Jacob here looking phenomenal. So yeah, I'll be intrigued to see how they navigate that because obviously we have a Kasha and everything there, but they are each other's endgame. And actually, the actors are hilarious because in interviews, when you start talking about like other pairings, they like literally make faces. They're like, "What? No." When Jacob did a very lengthy interview with a YouTuber called Autumn Brown, and he's just so hilariously negative about Armand and Louis's relationship. He's like, yeah, that one never really made sense to me. And it's like, Louis, come on, Jacob, be good. So yeah, I cannot see them going with anyone else, and nor I don't think the audience is going to really accept it. So
No.
they've got a bit of a challenge set out for them because I don't care. No one's going to care about Lestat banging his way through 100 different groupies, but true love, that's going to be a bit different.
Mm.
Nobody wants to see him falling in love with a witch or anybody else. Would you have guessed whose coffin was whose instantly? I felt like you would. I love that when they got the two designs for them.
Yeah, it's definitely sort of they represent their personalities to a big degree. This isn't, they've not gone in for a twofer. They have, they've got their own specific things.
Lestat's going to have like a double wide coffin in the new series. Rockstar Lestat's going to have like some ridiculously ornamental, obscene coffin somewhere. I know that they sold coffins and they were like $3,000. And I really need the lady that bought one to put pictures up because I want to know. I want like a photo shoot in the AMC coffin. It's amazing. But yeah, you've got Louise, who's very black, very minimalist, very sleek, very glossy. And then this sort of ornate wooden affair for Lestat. And I love the I don't like sleeping angry scene. It's so soft. Lestat is just so ridiculously in love because he just immediately buys the fair play for Louis. He says, "Can I have this?" And Lestat's like, "Yeah, sure. I love you. Of course, you can have whatever you want." Just like, "Oh, you're so down bad." And then yeah, Louis just skips through 5 years, and I was like, "Whoa, whoa, slow down there. We want to see more of the honeymoon." But oh no. And I want to know, like, what were you doing? What was he vegan during those 5 years? Was he eating people? What was he doing? Presumably eating people.
Yeah, which maybe is why he doesn't want to talk about it because it's, he's, as he says in this, he's not eaten anybody since the year 2000. So maybe, looking back on that time. I don't know. Do vegans talk about when they ate meat? I don't really know.
No,
It might be just
probably
a
not.
terrible time in their past.
Because he does skip through the honeymoon phase, and I was like, I really, really want to see just some like incredibly boring scenes of them together because I feel like they're so lovely in the beginning and so soft. You've got Lestat and his little straw hat, and he can't keep his eyes off Louis at any minute. Anywhere is like entire. Summary does this thing where his whole body is turned to Louis at anyone in any moment of any scene, and it's wonderful. Then we have the "Did you eat the baby" sequence, which I thought I'm wrong because I thought it was hilarious, and I still think there's a part of me that still thinks he probably did eat the baby. But I mean, Daniel could verify that quite easily with records, but it's a very funny scene, and his family is obviously just thrilled that 5 years down the line, we have now firmly established that Louis does indeed have a rich white husband, which presumably, as I can imagine, does not go down well. And he's not been and seen them. It's like, what do you mean you
Hmm.
didn't go and see the twins? Like, come on, Louis, what are we doing here? Um, so yeah, just crazy. And then Louis chowing down on that guy in front of Daniel. Again, the man is completely feral. It's at Damek
Yes, I
when he's
do.
talking to him.
Yeah, I do enjoy how Danik's just, yeah, this is just Tuesday night for him. And he starts trying to like have a little chat with Daniel, but he starts doing it in Russian. And then Louis is like, no, 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 he's English. And then the guy just immediately flips into English and he's like, oh, so have you know, how do you like Dubai? Have you know, seen the sights? It just feels like a very, very strange sort of set of circumstances to be in. You're watching this vampire eat this man, but this man's just like chatting to you about the weather and, you know, have you checked out this big tourist spot?
I love that Danek is an example of like a bit part player who just like absolutely makes the most of it, because I think he's phenomenal in that. As you said, he's just like, hey, I'm here to be eaten. Immediately keels over. Um, Louis again, kind of indulging his kink in front of Daniel, and Daniel still. I mean, they're so wrong because Daniel still doesn't really realize the shared history that they have. He certainly doesn't realize anything about Armand in any of these sequences. But yeah, that Danik is an absolute riot. And then we have my favorite declaration of love, the "you have no twin" speech, where you have Louis looking so beautiful in his cozy cardi, his soft cozy cardigan. And you know, Louis, by the way, was dressing him and Lestat throughout all of these years. There's absolutely no way it was anything else. And he looks so cozy. And it's the whole "you're a challenge every sunset, St. Louis, and I wouldn't have you any other way." Such a beautiful declaration of love. Um, and then comes before kind of a sequence of profound humiliation, which is where we realize that inside Lestat has the opportunity to kind of say all these wonderful things. And he obviously does love Louis more than anything in the world. But then they still have to navigate life as a patron and valet when they go to places outside of their home, which must be so profoundly humiliating for Louis to go from being kind of, I mean, the head of the household. Although, again, I mean, it must have been so difficult for Louis, because I guess Lestat must own the house and everything in it.
Yeah.
Not great being a kept man. He's got his own money with the fair play, but as we soon see, he's kind of been lured into that deal in a way, knowing that eventually he won't be allowed to own it because of the laws that are changing to make it a whites only establishment. But I can't imagine being a kept man in that environment and what it must have done to kind of etched away at Louis' soul to kind of not be equal to Lestat, to have to be his valet. And then later when Lestat takes up Antoinette, I mean, he very notably doesn't take a black mistress, takes a white mistress that he can wander around with, whereas Louis got to stand 2 steps behind her. It's like there are you know, as much as Lestat obviously adores the ground Louis walks on, there's all these little things about the way he navigates society in those days that you just want to give Lestat a bit of a smack around the head, really.
Mm. And then with the valeting, we get to I've spent a lot of this episode with Louis kind of talking about, you know, he not wanting to eat people and he wanting to stay connected to his
Mm.
family, even though he doesn't talk to them for 5 years. But then he, you know, he admits that even the stat is, you know, is partial to humans sometimes, as long as they can hold a note. And as we see in this episode, what happens when somebody can't hold a note? He's not the kindest. Like he basically, not only does he eventually go on to kill this guy, but before that, he has made sure that he's stripped every semblance of confidence and like self-respect that this man has ever had in his talent.
Do not play with your food, Lestat. Do not play with your food. And it's great that we see this echoed with Claudia later. She is her father's daughter. They both have this phenomenally cruel streak, and we see it here. But yeah, I mean, like, okay, I mean, he sounded fine to me. It's like, come on, Lestat, don't be that mean about the tenor. But yeah, to bring him home, humiliate him, and then spend hours killing him. No, 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 no. This is not appropriate behavior. But this is when we get our first full Lestat tantrum. And also, we have to give immense credit to Sam Reid and to Jacob Anderson. It is very hard to shout in a different accent because your natural accent tends to come through. But Lestat's tantrums, and indeed when Louis gets into fights later on in the series, their accents never come through. which I think is really impressive because the Australian accent as well is particularly quite hard to mask. There are so many times I've seen Aussies and things, and like there's always one word or two that catches them out, but the accent work in the whole series is really impressive. I think there's one, it's the word follow-ups in the very last scene just before Daniel basically destroys everything. Assad's man has to say the phrase specious follow-ups. And that's really difficult to say anyway, because it doesn't really trip off the tongue. But his accent comes through, his natural accent comes through incredibly strongly on that, because it's kind of the follow-ups. It just doesn't,
Mm.
it's a really hard phrase to say. But other than that, like they're all note perfect. You can't hear it at all. Considering you've got a Brit and an Aussie being New Orleans and French. It's really impressive. But yes, our first full Lestat tantrum. I do love his little tantrums. Like you just have to, you're a killer, Louis. And of course, that's one of the main scenes they did in the film as well, where we have Tom Cruise yelling at Brad Pitt. It does not really compare. I really liked the film, and now I can go back. I watched the film as a very, very correct, very sort of studious interpretation of the book, but it just pales in comparison to the series now, I think. And then we have the final scene of Louis and Daniel with that huge picture in the background, which is titled Transformation, which I love. And he is talking about Alice, his first wife. And where do you stand on the possibility that some of Alice may actually be Armand in terms of Daniel's memories? So obviously that plays into it as the series progresses. Do we think that some of the time when Daniel is remembering Alice, he's actually remembering Armand?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say as I sort of picked up on that. Obviously, having this is the first time watching it since seeing series two and sort of realizing, that Armand has been sort of playing around in Daniel's head. So yeah, I feel like they're probably because they keep it's Alice that they keep needling, isn't it? In series two, they keep like
Yeah,
mentioning her and things. So it does kind of feel like there maybe is a little bit of if he has manipulated certain elements, then he knows exactly what he's put in there, so he can
yeah.
really hurt him. So yeah, I think there probably is an element of that having been played with.
There's one line where Daniel says that he's excited to be in Paris, and it's in series two, I think, because he could hold Alice's hand without fear. And why would you be frightened to hold Alice's hand in Paris? You would only be frightened to hide. You would only not be frightened to hold a guy's hand, because there
Mm.
would be no reason for you to ever have a concern about holding your wife's hand somewhere. So yeah, I just love Armand. He's just like such a twisted little gremlin. He fascinates me. I love Louis and Lestat, but Armand's sociopathy just completely fascinates me the whole way through. But it's also a really lovely human note to end it on, that Daniel is sort of very sheepishly giving out something of his past, tainted or not, as it may be, with Armand's mindfuckery, telling Louis about how he likes his wife's, eyebrow, and just like these very gentle, very dull human memories, like a little bit of a lovely trade. And then we kind of leave them in this moment of quiet in the Dupai apartment. So yeah, I mean, it's like an episode full of incredibly iconic moments, but doesn't, it is a quite kind of a vampire lore episode, I feel, in a way. But I mean, so many beautiful. I love the "You're a challenge every sunset" St. Louis speech more than anything in the world. I love their little sleepy cozy. I don't like to sleep angry makeup section in the coffin room, and how beautiful Jacob Anderson looks when he's smiling at him. It's yeah, it's a wonderful episode. It really is a good episode, and I hope that Alan Taylor comes back at some point because it is a phenomenally directed episode, I think. But he kind of laid the groundwork for the visual guide for the series and then departed like a superhero. And that's where we leave it. So you can keep in touch with us. We are on Twitter or X, which I'm pretty much just have for Interview with the Vampire now because it's a terrifying place. You can follow us there. We are Savage Garden 0, all one word, just the number 0, not the word, on Twitter. And we are Savage-Garden on Blue Sky. And we have an email. Please send us nice things. Don't send us complaints. But if you want to chat about, because obviously we will be recapping each episode and hopefully we'll be getting guests on the show at a later point. But if you have a particular point that you've always desperately wanted to talk about one episode, then please do drop us a line. We are savagegardenpodcast@gmail.com.
Yes, please do follow along and drop us a line. It would be nice to know that there is more people listening to this than like our parents and besties. But equally, thank you, parents and besties. We
yes,
appreciate you
we love
too,
you.
but we would like to know that we're not shouting into the void. And whenever I have mentioned to somebody that this is something that we're doing, there are so many people out there who love this show, and it's not just the horror crowd, because you would think, oh, Interview the Vampire, oh, it's horror, but it's not necessarily the horror fans who are the ones that are talking about this, because it's got those things of horror, but it's much more a drama. It's a gothic romance. It traverses so many different things. So we would very much like to hear from people and see what everybody thinks of this very fine show.
And thank you all for joining us.
Yep, and yes, come back next time where we'll be delving into the third installment of the very first season.